Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. I'm Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands. Sometimes our listeners want more support than a podcast can give, individual or couple support, which I now provide. Details can be found at modernhusbands.com, or you can email me at brian@modernhusbands.com. For today's podcast, we welcome Heather and Douglas Boneparth, a powerhouse couple blending financial expertise with real-life relationship insights. Douglas, a nationally recognized financial advisor and founder of Bone Fide Wealth, serves on advisory councils for CNBC, Investopedia, and with his wife Heather, serves on our Modern Husbands Advisory Board. Heather is a former attorney and a rising voice at the intersection of love, money, and family, and she now leads business and legal affairs at the firm. Together, they co-author the Joint Account newsletter and are passionate about helping couples build financial intimacy and teamwork. In this episode, Heather and Douglas share powerful personal stories, research-backed insights, and practical tips to help couples navigate financial conversations, divide responsibilities fairly, and build lasting trust. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed or simply want to strengthen your financial partnership, this episode offers both motivational and actionable advice. Enjoy the show. Heather and Douglas, excited to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Yes.
Our listeners are in for a real treat. Not only are they exceptional professionals who are perfectly positioned to write a book about how couples can manage money together, which they've done. It's called Money Together. But I'm also thrilled to announce that they have joined our advisory board with Modern Husbands, along with Dr. Ross. And unfortunately, Christian is not here for today's episode. He's in the midst of moving. But we thank you for joining our advisory board as well.
We're so happy to be a part of your super, super important work. And we're honored, just honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. And you're an inspiration, and I would love to know, and Bruce would love to know, what inspired you to write Money Together?
Well, I think that is a two-part answer, because there's my side of it and his side of it.
Okay.
And I'll say from my side, I consider myself someone who has always kind of been in tune with our money, in our family household. But it was interesting to watch us go through this real seismic shift in our relationship during COVID, as so many families experienced. I was a former corporate attorney, and at the time, we were raising two small children, 1 and 4, and at the same time that all these unprecedented things were happening, Doug's career was taking off, and I felt like my career was kind of plateauing, and it was so interesting to watch the power dynamics in our household begin to shift. And as I took on more of the invisible labor in our home, I noticed that my involvement in our family finances was almost obsolete. Like, I completely let my involvement slip. And it was due to many things. I mean, and I guess, just to summarize quickly how this all came to be, was that I thought, if this could happen to us, my husband, who's been a wealth management professional since he was 20 years old, and we are the kind of couple that we always took care to make sure that things felt fair. And if we could slip so far from where that was, what was going on in everyone else's households? So as someone who also, like, I was a former journalism major and someone who's always loved to write and listen to people's stories, I kind of said to myself, I need to hear other people's stories about this. And we need to really dig into what isn't being said, because if we could get to this point, what else is going on with everybody else?
Yeah. It's extraordinarily easy to not communicate around money. And for me, it showed up in practice, and it showed up with clients where, worst case, you would have one partner sitting at the table across from you to talk about their family's finances. How can you do that? I mean, you got two players to the game here, and we're really only having a dialogue with one. And I knew something needed to change in that regard, and it was wild to me that here we are, as financial planners, laying out these wonderful plans to help people navigate their financial lives. And you're writing this again for the entire household, and you're really only getting participation from one.
And on top of that, I would say, even when you get both both partners there.
Yep.
And even when you had two clients sitting across the table from you, there was a subtext. There was stuff that wasn't being said,
Yeah, it
right?
became more and more apparent to find out who was really engaged and who really cared. And I wanted to find out more why we would have one active participant and one passive participant. So it prompted us to, not only look at what was happening in our lives, but also what was happening in the lives of our clients. And we had this moment where, like, we're writing another book again, aren't we? And sure enough, here we are. We've spent the last 2.5 to 3 years pouring, a lot of love and labor into this project. And, it's like any big project you've been working on, you get to the very end and you just can't wait to get it out there. So, it's that moment. It's super exciting and all the other emotions that come along with it.
What creates more friction in a marriage? Managing money, managing kids, or writing a book together?
All, all of the above. The good news is we didn't get divorced after writing the first book, so we had a pretty good shot of staying married after the second one, and COVID didn't take us out. I don't mean physically, didn't challenge our marriage either. You'll see it had
I,
the potential to do that. Which is
Mm.
a big part of the book, but it didn't. So yeah, those are all great ways to
I
touch.
answer that question for real though. And I think that one of the hardest parts of writing a book is that there's really no boundaries around like if you are inspired to work or if you are inspired to write and you need to get an idea down and the kids are talking to you and you've got stuff going, it is really hard to like carve out
Yeah.
the time that you need when the
Yeah.
inspiration strikes because it doesn't always mesh with the time that you've allotted for it. So I think I feel I am happy for our children too that this book writing process is over. Let's just say.
Take blocks of time that I don't think a lot of young parents get, even if they do a good job separating their work hours from their family hours. And our situation is one where that line is beyond blurred on a everyday basis. So truly a challenge to try and get those big blocks of time, not just for Heather to be able to write, but us to be able to think and get it all down.
Well, I think as readers, I mean, we're very fortunate, to have you guys have these challenges and go through them for us, and have these experiences, have these insights. But I think it actually leads to our next question of then how are you balancing these roles as financial professionals and as a couple, based off of what you guys been, experiencing and finding.
Go for it.
We have a chapter in the book that I tell a little bit of our story in it, but we spoke with several other entrepreneurs for this chapter and professionals that coach entrepreneurs and couples therapists and things. And I think that there's a really important distinction between boundaries and non-negotiables because boundaries are really difficult when you run your own business because there's going to be times that things are hot, right? Like things have to get done. You're in go time, you're in crunch time. If I'm on deadline for this book or if he's got a major deadline for a client, like we
Mm-hmm.
may have to work harder than we may have to work at night. We may have to put the kids to bed and go back to work. But there's a difference between this like faux concept of boundaries that may not always exist when you're an entrepreneur and non-negotiables in your marriage. And so for us, there are things that we always try and do every week that allow us to still have these touch points with each other and allow us to still kind of connect at the end of the day on a spousal level that is not the professional level. Like for us, this is silly. Doug and I love to watch TV. We watch a ton of TV, which you also hear a little bit about in the book. I try and I probably make too many like couples analogies, but like we love that. And so we've got like our shows that we have to watch and we find a time like we will stay up later than we should to get that hour together at the end of the day. But
Those are
it's
non-negotiables. Like you have to watch those TV shows.
negotiable in our life and it keeps us connected on something that is not the work we're doing all day.
Turn it off, and we're picking hopefully really good shows here that you want to pick up where you left off. So it's a solid one.
No, I totally understand having a fiance that's also an entrepreneur. Like we're both kind of in a financial industry or, as a professor teaching personal finance, like you're just always on the go. You're always thinking about talking about finances. But like, yeah, like those client meetings, those like things that come up always happen. Just like you have to set that time to be with each other.
Yeah, what happens if you don't carve out that time is a challenge that we've faced and have worked on to get better at. I'll give you a good example. I'll wrap up a client meeting at 4 o'clock. I know she might be downstairs getting the kids, dinner ready, post school stuff. I run downstairs and I say, "Hey, guess what happened?" Or, I got this email in the middle of this meeting. She's like, "You really expect me to have a like full on engaged conversation about, what just happened here?" And she'll do that to me too. It's equal as far as I'm concerned. And we just, you know, have gotten better at not doing that and finding the time to be able to communicate what has happened at any given time.
We also respect each other now enough. And this is again, like, I think it's a communication skill more than anything
Yeah.
to be able to say to him, hey, I know you want to tell me about this. Now really isn't a great moment. Why don't we connect about this in an hour or two once we get the kids off to the next thing? We can talk about it. But instead of him trying to like shove it through or me too, like I think that we now can kind of like say that in a respectful way instead of one of us kind of like allowing it to go on longer than it should. And then the other person says,
Yeah.
why do I care about this? I'm not in the way. Yeah, we do a better job saying, hey, let's take a beat and let's find some time later on and we can go through all these things because a lot of this is about time and place and
Yeah.
environment, I think, and being able to respect what the other person is saying, like, hey, maybe I'm not in a position to receive the information you'd like to give me right now.
Mm.
And
Let me relate that to money though. We're talking about stuff that happens in our business, but when people do this with money, which is something that will come up more times than not,
oh yeah.
Mhm.
um, they'll try and do that wrong place, wrong time to have that conversation. And I think that's
Right.
key for disaster, whether it's, God forbid, in front of the kids or out with friends or at a moment you're trying to enjoy where you're spending money, you're going to then ruin it by saying, "Oh, is this too expensive?" Like these are not the avenues to have that. So creating space, particularly around money or anything that really has the potential to be emotional. And that's why it's usually money, because it's such an inherently emotional topic that not only is pulling on two people, but two people's very different perspectives around money, only making it more difficult to actually connect and communicate the right way.
Why is money such a charged topic in relationships?
Yeah. So, long before you meet your partner and have to do this dance of how you feel about money, how I feel about money, is indeed how you have felt about money
Yeah.
from a very early age, probably, whether it's 20 or 30 years of experiencing and dealing with money scripts, how your parents dealt with it, how your religion deals with it, how your culture deals with it. You're bringing literally decades of that into your relationship. And guess who else is doing that? Your partner's doing that. So
Yep.
it's literally worlds colliding and it's attached to things that are deeply embedded in your mind. And for all those reasons, and we can get into like societal pressure and what your friends are doing, the keeping up with the Joneses, the whole behavioral finance aspect of it. Literally, we can go on and on and on, but this is what people are dealing with when they talk about money. It is extraordinarily messy.
It is tied to your identity in ways you haven't maybe thought about. I think that's how you can synthesize that, right? That
Yeah.
the way you approach money is tied to things that you haven't considered it's tied to. And
Yeah.
that's
Well
why when
said.
people
Yeah.
are fighting about spending, they're not really fighting about spending. They're
Right.
fighting about the way they were taught to spend by their parents. They're not fighting
Yeah.
about or something that they observed and that they took with them and they internalized, or they're fighting so hard to maintain some sense of maybe independence or freedom because they've tied the idea of what money means to them to that independence and freedom. They don't want to give up an inch. There's many reasons why it's so hard to talk about, but usually it's not the proximate money fight that's right in front of you. It's not like that one bill that was high that month. Like that's not really what's going on.
When you go to if you go to therapy, when you go to therapy to talk about what's bothered you that day or that week or that month, I will bet you money your therapist is going to tie that back to something that happened in your childhood and why it's mom and dad's fault or something like
Yeah.
that. Right? Every time. And you know what? They're right. It is mom and dad's fault. No, but that just goes to show you how deeply rooted your feelings around money are. They go back. It's like one standard deviation away from literally being hard coded in your DNA. So, it cuts deep, it's somewhere in one of those many, folds in your brain,
Somewhere up there.
somewhere in here.
So can we ask, what was the unknown or one of the unknowns that you found out about yourself?
That's so interesting. I just wrote a whole newsletter about that.
He must have read it.
Oh no, wow, I'm trying to think which one I should share. For me, I am a product of divorce from it. I'm an only child and grandchild on both sides of my family. And my parents got divorced. My parents got divorced when I was 13, but it was about a year and a half after my dad had a near-death experience. He was hit by a drunk driver. And so there were a lot of things that I think I had told myself for years that, I would like to make my own money because I don't want to deal with drama with my parents, it was like very factual, but I didn't connect these things back to this idea that I had been coping so hard with what I experienced as a child, and that I didn't know how to ask anyone for help, because what I learned from an early age was that, like, what I saw my dad go through in the years to follow, and ultimately my parents getting divorced and everything, like, he modeled this behavior of, like, no one can help you get through the hardest thing in your life. Like, I'm going to lean on the people I love to help me get through the hardest thing in my life. I'm going to go look elsewhere for that. And for me, what I took from that was that no one will be able to help me in my life, that only I'm going to be able to help myself. And how that played into money was, instead of doing the thing that I always dreamed of doing, which was being a writer or being a journalist, I went to school to be a lawyer because I thought I'd make a lot of money. And I graduated in the middle of the recession and ended up with 6 figures of student loan debt and not the high-paying job. And I sunk to a really, really low place of shame. And the way that all connects back is that I really had a really hard time asking for help from anyone, from him, from my parents. And I think that I was viewed as, like, I was always viewed as stubborn, and it, like, really wasn't from a place of being stubborn. Like, I was protecting myself because that was the only way I knew how to get through hard things.
Yeah, still stubborn, but a lot less so.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Mine isn't.
Douglas, if you don't mind, I need to interject. I really appreciate you sharing that vulnerability, because one of the things that really upsets me about some of these, financial figures out there is the shame they put on people, particularly around student loans. And it's this, like, position of me of, like, just toxic privilege that disgusts me. Like, when you share your story about why you made the decisions that you made and what you've accomplished, any human being with a heart and any human being with any sense would recognize that you made a series of really great choices based on circumstances, and that those choices are paying off now. But for anyone, and this is for listeners who have student loan debt, this is for anyone who experiences shame from some of the financial decisions that they're making. Like, please know that nobody can understand the choices that you made unless they understood the options that you had, and that everybody's stories are so different and they impact us in ways that are indescribable, unless, of course, that you're a great writer like yourself. I mean, you share that story in such a heartfelt way that I really understand it, which is another reason I'm excited to read your book. So sorry to interject there, Douglas, but that it was really meaningful what Heather had to say.
One, thank you so much. And two, we write about this, and I wrote about this in a chapter of our book about shame, in the section of our book about mistakes, where I compare, actually, my decision to take out that much student loan debt with someone who had almost exactly the same circumstances. Okay. And I think it's very interesting, because he and his now wife approached repayment of his loans kind of in a totally different way than I did. And they never really got caught in this cycle of shame. And that's, to your point, I think what's so interesting, because mistakes are the stories we tell ourselves about the decisions that we make. My debt wasn't like just something like they basically like it's actually a great story that they put funds in a separate account and earmarked the funds, and they called the account Diablo. And they basically took all of their excess money. They like were like
Yeah.
austerity measures to pay off that debt.
One whole salary was
One
dedicated
salary.
to the repayment
It
of
was like,
loans.
it's like an awesome story of teamwork, and like they got over it, and like it was great, and they really
Awesome.
did it. Whereas the circumstances were exactly the same for me on paper, but to me, the debt was not like some like demon that I could overcome with teamwork. The debt was me. Like
Mm.
the debt was
You were the demon.
the debt. No, the debt was was like everything that I couldn't have. It was everything I wasn't. And so the stories that I told myself, like, and so we're so detrimental, not only to my own like life, but to our financial lives, starting off our adult life. Like I was totally incapable of seeing beyond the shame of what I did. And it really impacted those years for us financially, emotionally. Like Doug wouldn't propose to me until I had kind of like reconfigured and gotten myself on some solid footing in my career, because he's like, I remember he said, he's like, I wanted you to see all the possible, like I wanted you to see the greatness that you are. I wanted you to see the possibilities for our life and to be hopeful for our future. Like we could not move forward until you said all that
Oh.
until we move forward. So I think it's this is also this is why money and relationships and like this is
Yeah.
why it's hard, because if you don't recognize the way that your partner is viewing some major decision that they've made in their financial life, like you're missing the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew at least, and it was hard for Heather to see this. She saw this very large, scary number and could not create the pathway to dealing with that financially. And, she's married a financial advisor here, and I have an ability to kind of be like, all right, let's go put all these emotions over there. Also, I'm not her, so I literally can only intellectually understand where she's coming from and empathize with her feelings, but I can't feel her feelings, obviously. Helped me understand and at least share with her how we create that pathway there. And
Mhm.
once we have that, along with her ability to acknowledge her feelings around that, you then can take that first step and walk down that road and get to the destination to where we are today of being like, okay, the student loan debt scary monster is behind us. It is, being handled in the way that we want it to be handled. And in practice, I've seen no shortage. I've seen it all. I've seen some of the messiest, if we're going to talk student loans, I've seen some of the messiest ways that people have gotten into loans, how families and parents have, duped them or abandoned them when it comes to, leaving them with this debt load, all the way over to the side of, my parents have taken care of it.
Sure.
Amazing sums of money that have been discharged from public service. There really isn't an angle I've seen. And Heather's story, while unique to her, is the story of many people who have under Brian, as you've said, whatever the circumstances were, have managed to find themselves in that position.
And it highlights just how powerful like the meaning of money is in our lives and how much it like embeds itself in our identity,
Yes.
for better or often worse.
Listeners have told us that they love the ideas we share on our podcast to manage money in the home as a team, but want more help than one episode can provide. That's why I'm excited to announce On the Same Page Consulting for corporations, couples, and individuals. Visit modernhusbands.com and click Our Services at the top of the page to learn more about how I can help you or your employees manage money in the home as a team. Again, that's modernhusbands.com. Now back to the show.
And you talk about like these differences in money management and money behaviors and identity. There's a lot of different perspectives that come into a couple in a marriage. What are some of the other common imbalances you've observed and how couples, I guess, divide their financial responsibility?
How they divide their responsibility.
Yeah.
I think that, and this is actually very interesting. I mean, I think that so one of the things we talk about a lot in the book is contribution and what it means to contribute to your household, because I don't think that we have a broad enough view from on a societal level of what it means to contribute. I want caregivers to feel like they are providers too, right?
Well
They are.
said. They
They,
are. And thank
they
you
They,
for
are.
bringing that
Like,
up.
right.
Yep.
you have no debate from us there.
Yeah.
I write that 3 times in the book. It says caregivers are providers, caregivers are providers, caregivers are providers. But we want everyone to understand that. I think that where we fail, when we don't recognize that, is by not honoring the value of people's time, spouses' times equally.
Yeah.
And what happens with that when the partner who either isn't earning as much money or is not earning an income at all feels as though they need to shoulder the entire burden of responsibilities of the household and the family, then what happens, what we've seen happen, and frankly, what happened in our own lives, and is one of the inspirations for what got us into this work, was that was exactly when I let my involvement in our financial situation and our money management slip, because money felt like the only thing I didn't have to deal with. I knew that he had that covered. I had to cover everything else, but I knew that he had that covered. That is not, to me, okay. And I know I've read all these things about, like, the CEO and the CFO, and you can be the CEO. That's fine, but you still have to have the meeting, right?
You
The
both sit on the board. I mean,
sit on the board, and the
Have your board meetings.
Yeah. Right.
executive leadership team still needs to meet. And I do believe you can divvy up tasks, right? You can have somebody handle bill pay. That is fine. But you still need to both have a basic awareness. You need to have access. Access is huge. That's the other thing. You would be shocked. Maybe you wouldn't be shocked, but the proverbial you would be shocked
yeah.
at how many people don't even have access to their accounts.
Yeah. Like, do you have access to your checking? Like, do both partners have access to literally their joint checking account on their phone? Or, or nowhere there's these things called checkbooks, where the checkbook even is in the house. Very, very basic levels. I guess my take is you have to understand at the most macro level, the 4 most important things, this is my understanding, in people's lives, and this is also my order, people can order these things differently, is time, right? It's the most precious commodity. You can't get more of it. Family, because you love them. Then money, right? So, and then lastly, it's religion, at least as far as I'm concerned, or faith. And, you know, here in this part of our conversation, we are linking time to money and family as well. Top 3 all get intertwined on a daily basis together. So when you ask, like, why is money, so embedded in people's lives and feel a certain way? There's almost no conversation around money where you're not tapping into one of or multiple of those 4 most important parts of anyone's life.
Right.
So you mentioned having these board meetings between the CEO, CFO. Like, how do we have these fair conversations about labor, especially if someone's feeling overwhelmed, resentful? If they have these intense emotions embedded in through the conversation.
Well, and bringing it back to, I think, what we touched on earlier, time and place matter. It is very important to not do this when you're already upset, pissed off, emotionally charged, and reactive. That is not the way to communicate. The way to communicate is at a time where you've set the landscape for you both to feel comfortable, at ease, not distracted. And only you can answer what that time is for you guys. Like, for us, that time happens when Doug and I like to go for walks. We walk a lot. I guess that's like something left over from our city days. Like, we love to walk. And it's easier for us to have more productive conversations when we are in motion, because when we are at home, there's always like a phone pinging. There's
all your habits from house stay with you when you're in your house. When you're out there,
it's also probably not a good time when it's dinner time and your kids are around and everyone's or running activities and stuff like that. That's not a great time to do it either.
the in between moments
So
are not ideal.
So, I mean, there's people who do it weekly. We don't do it weekly. I mean, we talk about things weekly, just the proximate stuff that's going on in our lives, but we aim for a quarterly money date where we sit down and really talk about the state of affairs as a whole,
Yeah.
not just spending and everything, but kind of like where we are with respect to our goals. And we also include in this conversation, to your point about care and time and labor, we include like a check-in as how are we all feeling? Do you feel like you've been overloaded? Do you feel like you've been doing too much? Or where have you been feeling like you're drowning on a week to week basis? And do we have enough? And like for us, we've had babysitters that we've kind of like looped into our lives at various times. And like, are we getting enough from them? Are we asking them for the right help? Or are we what are the resources at our disposal, and are we using them the correct way?
When you do have these meetings and you are engaging in these conversations, one thing that I've noticed, certainly out of a lot of guys who are leading these conversations, is they want to dive into the numbers right off the bat. And a lot of people, gender aside, diving into numbers is not the best start to a conversation. Heather sitting down to go over the net worth table and cash flow will not work as well as talking about the goals we want to accomplish together, whether that is the rewards of hard work in vacations and talking about, hey, remember that trip we wanted to take? Would you like to talk with me about that and how we can make that happen a little sooner? She'll jump at that. Most people would jump at that because I'm going to get into the numbers from that because you have to. But now you got the attention, you got the engagement on something that you both can connect with, not, hey, let's take a look at what's in the brokerage account. Talking about investments with Heather might not win the conversation over like talking about what we want for ourselves over the next year, 3 years, and 5 years. So you really need to meet your partner where they're at and how they like to engage in the topic around money. Stop fooling yourselves into thinking that this is just a ones and zeros conversation when we're spending all of this time telling you about how emotions are overriding the ability to get into the ones and zeros. So ride that wave. Talk about the things that make you feel good, the goals, the aspirations you have, and then inherently start saying, all right, here's how we make this happen. We got to take a look at the budget. We got to take a look at where we're spending, because if we want to get there by November, we got to somehow figure out how we put $1,000 a month back in our pockets and we can make that happen. Then you have the convo and you realize, nope, we're not giving up, date nights with our friends to have a vacation in November when we can do it in February when it's cold and we need to get out of here. You know what? This was a productive conversation.
That may have been a real conversation.
Yeah, but that's how it's done.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you there. And I've often said that, all financial goals are really just life goals, value goals. Yeah. And so redirecting that conversation with the intention of like, this is what we want out of life, this is in alignment with our values, just changes up the entire conversation you're having.
And I want to throw this out there. If you're highly motivated and successful and, let's say even running a business or you're an entrepreneur, all of those things indicate one thing to me. It's only going to get more complex. There was a time when we would sit down, talk about money, but Heather wouldn't get into the P&L of the business with me. Meanwhile, here I am wishing like, man, I wish I had a partner to go through the P&L with me so we could be aligned with that.
It's interesting. There's always two sides. There's two sides to every story, right? And I think one thing, not only all the free therapy that I got from the amazing experts that we interviewed for this book, but it was brought to my attention that even situations where one spouse looks like they're, for example, like, oh, well, I'll just use this. I don't mean to use such a gendered example, but he handles all the finances and he's so controlling and he's so whatever. So it has been brought to my attention that maybe he is thinking, I really wish I had a partner in this because I actually overwhelmingly stressed about the fact that the entire responsibility of talking about of handling our finances is on me. And the reason I'm lashing out at her is because about spending is just because I'm saying to her, I need a partner in this and I'm overwhelmed and I really would like for you to be more involved. And so I hadn't really thought about it. Honestly, until we started this work. I was kind of like, well, I was seeing it from like I wasn't seeing both sides.
Well, this is a very hyper specific example because it's her and I. Not everyone's financial lives are set up this way. But when Heather made the transition of being a corporate attorney to working in our practice in our wealth management firm, a lot of the constructs that she had in terms of how we earn money, like, hey, I'm making a salary, I know I'm contributing, I know we can do all of
Contributing.
yeah, I know I'm contributing. I know I can do all of these things. Why do I need to worry about, the P&L or how the business is doing to any degree more than, hey, Doug, how's the business doing? Good, great, great, great. I'm still employed. We're good here. But meanwhile, the whole time is like, I would love another set of eyes on this over here. We should get a little bit more in depth on that.
Well, I'm glad you brought this example up. But what happens if one partner doesn't want to be involved?
Before you get to that, though, I need to interject one thing that's really important because research was just released in the last couple of weeks by mutual friends of ours, Dr. Archuleta, Dr. Ford, and Dr. Hargrove, who found that the bean, they call them the bean counters, the people who actually handle the day-to-day finances, they experience stress and anxiety more so than their partner from that task, right? So that alone creates stress and anxiety. And if you are doing that on your own without any guidance or support or conversations with your partner, it makes it even worse. And so with that as context, what's your advice when one partner does not want to get involved at all?
I don't believe you have the luxury of not getting involved at all.
Mm.
And I approach this we approach this very delicately in the book. In the fourth section about power. Because I think that it's really, you could think about it holistically like this. We all have an individual responsibility to step into our own power, our own knowledge. That is not a burden that can be placed upon him. It is my obligation to at least to find a way to be interested enough to listen and engage because I owe it to him and I owe it to my children to have some idea of what's going on. And I say that knowing that it's hard and giving people multiple on ramps to do that. So we're big proponents of like meeting people where they are. That doesn't mean that you need to be ready to sit down and talk about the P&L of the business next week. That could mean like find what feels digestible, interesting, and entertaining to you. I don't even care if it's a content creator who's getting into personal finance for like women, for example, like, or if you find a newsletter that you like and subscribe to that and just start speaking familiarizing yourself with the language of money a little bit. There's different ways in. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all way in to having that conversation like 0 to 100, but you do owe it to yourself. And by the way, getting into like becoming involved with money and with your family's finances doesn't, again, start with the numbers. It starts with you. It starts with your goals as an individual. Before we can talk about your goals as a family. So maybe identifying some of what you want for yourself, right? Then you take it to your spouse and then you can say, okay, what are we doing as a household that can help me achieve some of these things? That to me is really important. So like it's really one of the things that I really hope this book does is that it inspires and it motivates people who have been too afraid or too disengaged for too long. It shows them an on-ramp into this that maybe isn't a way that they were thinking about it before. But a little bit of tough love is important too. And that like,
I'm gonna take on the tough love side of it here. Sorry to interrupt you.
He'll take the financial advisor side of it.
Fear mongering is not a technique that I really like to use in practice, but you sprinkle a little humor on it, and maybe it could be used tactically. And I do like to do that from time to time. But what I think most people don't want is to be put in a really bad position when bad things start to happen. And there are bad things that will happen inevitably. We're all going to die. You likely will get hurt or become disabled. There's some decent probability at some point this will happen to you. Hopefully not in a way that removes you from the game of life. You
Doug
want to jump
has,
in here?
no, I just want to say that you have had more than one client of similarly situated to Douglas and I who
Yeah.
have unexpectedly found themselves in a position
Yeah.
to
So,
be a widow or widower
so I'll give
over
you
the last couple of years.
I tell clients how I say it, like, don't have me share the horror stories that I've been subject to by, occupational hazard by virtue of what I do. You don't want to hear about the widow our age whose husband filled out the beneficiaries wrong on
Oh,
life insurance and what that actually means. You don't want to hear the stories from the partner that was so in the dark that they don't even know how to get money out of their checking account so that they can pay the daycare bill for their kids who are wondering where, their spouse is. And I'll stop there because it gets worse and more sad. And I don't enjoy sharing these things. Hopefully just the threat of these stories is enough.
Go with the motivation first, and then then the hard truth underlies that, though. I think is the
yeah.
Seeing someone not get to the attorney's office to create the estate planning documents and they got 2 kids and a mortgage and a business. And in the back of my mind, you got lights flashing here. So, back to the question here, how do you get people motivated? Everything Heather said is a much better on-ramp to it, but there are tactics here that hopefully do, you can also shake the cage a little bit to show that life is fickle and you have to do these things.
I just hope we do share a couple stories in the book of people having to face something that they never thought they'd have to face.
Mm.
And I hope the lesson, and I've framed the lesson in such a way that people who have thought they never could do something realize they can do a lot more than they ever thought they could.
Yeah.
And I think that is the lesson underneath all of it. Not the scare tactic, not just the scare tactic, though those facts are very true and very jarring, but that you are capable of much more than you ever thought you were.
Well said. Heather, Douglas, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful insights with us today. Where can our listeners learn more about you, and where can they buy your book?
Absolutely. So, fresh off the presses, a new book website. Go to domoneytogether.com. Everything about the book, the ability to pre-order, learn about us is there. From the firm perspective, bonafidewealth.com, and on any social media channel. What do you got?
And don't forget our weekly newsletter, The Joint Account,
Who
on
can forget?
Substack, where we talk about couples and money every single week from both of our perspectives.
Read the joint account.
Yes.
But if you find our social media channel, all of these links are there, or you can just, Google it. Or the thing kids are doing these days is prompt it in your favorite AI.
Oh, God.
All right, we have one remaining question to ask you too, and this has been a wonderful conversation, by the way. But we love to have our guests leave our listeners with one piece of simple and actionable advice. What would that advice be? And you each get a turn.
You want to go first?
Money with your spouse is not a game you win once. You have to play the game forever.
Mm.
She stole mine. But we'll do this one. Everything I've learned about self-care, whether it's your mental health, your physical health, or your financial health, is born out of consistency and discipline. This is stuff you will have to do over and over and over again. To piggyback off Heather's point about you don't get it to do once, the reason you don't win at money once is because your life always changes. It's fickle, and therefore money will always be something different at every phase of your life. And if you don't have consistency and discipline with the practice around any of these things, the likelihood of you being successful is a lot lower than if you had some decent practice.
Thank you both for your wisdom and your time today.
Thanks,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Don't leave just yet. Be sure to like and subscribe before you do. And a reminder to visit modernhusbands.com if you're looking for money and home management support in your life. Just click the Our Services button at the top of the page. Again, that's at modernhusbands.com. And many thanks to our co-hosts, our guests, and of course, all of you for joining today.